Because, well, they don't have some criminal objective. Well, I don't know. Let's look at the way the state indicts people. The state's around Investigator Viverito. Investigator Viverito is the last person I can find anywhere on video or that you've seen on video holding that missing $500,000 watch. Did she steal the watch? Was that an overt act and furtherance of the conspiracy? Maybe I should go to a grand jury and try to indict this. It's the state gang or something ludicrous like that. Everything gang investigators see is viewed from the viewpoint of it must be a gang. Mr. Kendrick, look at the photo they showed you of Mr. Kendrick in the bandana shirt. Go back and look at it in color. The gang investigator says it's red. It is orange. Orange as the sun. You look at it, you decide, don't take my word for it. Don't take their word for it. Don't take the state's words for it. Use your own eyes. But when you're a gang investigator, everything has to fit the narrative. And that's the narrative. The snake on Mr. Kendrick's chest. Did he get that snake because YSL is a gang? Or did he get that snake because it represents the tree of knowledge in the Adam and Eve story? Well, they can tell you. I saw a mentalist Saturday night at a show, and this mentalist was amazing. This mentalist, you would think of something, and the mentalist would tell you, "Oh my gosh, you're thinking of a number between 1 and 50. It's 47." It was actually quite impressive. Apparently, Investigator Viverito and these other gang experts are mentalists. Maybe they will be at the next fundraiser I go to. I'd like to see some more of their tricks. Mr. Kendrick does modeling shots. So someone will say to Mr. Kendrick, "Hey, hold this hat." Oh, that's gang. The hat has a rat with a line through it. That's gang activity. We're sending a message to everybody. There's a photo taken outside at the time of a video shoot for music. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh, look at that, gang activity. There's photos of Mr. Kendrick wearing clothes that say slat outside of a recording studio. More gang activity. More people trying to pull themselves out, get into music, exercise their First Amendment rights, more gang activity. It's just exhausting, folks. All right, the racketeering charge. Racketeering is very complicated, as you all know. And the state explained racketeering to you. So I'm not going to go into all of the details of what it takes for you guys to find racketeering. Although I do want to repeat, you have to find each of those elements beyond a reasonable doubt, and you're not going to be able to do that with Mr. Kendrick. So I only want to focus on a few parts. Just bear with me. It's late in the day. Late in the day. Just give me a little more time. A few parts of the racketeering charge. First of all, the state has not shown a conspiracy beyond a reasonable doubt. What is a conspiracy? It is an understanding to accomplish or pursue a common criminal objective. Criminal. There's been no common criminal objective shown. What has been shown to you and what was shown to you even earlier today? A series of independent, disparate acts over and over again. All kinds of different people committing criminal acts. I'm not going to argue to you that criminal acts were not committed, but they have not shown any relationship between these acts. They have not shown you anything that's shown it was done for a common criminal objective. That was not demonstrated. Again, as Mr. Sharp said, when Mr. Stevens was here, Tick, and Mr. Stevens was talking about selling pot, he did that for his own benefit. He's not paying up the ladder. And by the way, there is no ladder. Investigator Viverito told you because this is a hybrid gang, there's no structure to it. So I don't know how Mr. Tick is supposed to, Mr. Stevens is supposed to spread the money around. But it doesn't matter. They're going to say there's a common criminal objective. Nothing has been shown. Tick. I have to go on a side note on Tick, Mr. Stevens. Mr. Kendrick, Mr. Williams, they were trying to avoid the fate of Mr. Stevens. Mr. Stevens, remember, I'd love you to go back and listen, read his testimony. Remember, look at your notes. At the age of 11, society threw him away. They threw him away. They tossed him in juvie, where he learned about gangs and drugs and everything else. Threw his life away. And he's trying to get his life in order again. And he's dragged back into this. State says one of the objectives was money and power. Where's the money flowing? Where's the money? Where's the money coming in? The state had the power of the courts, their subpoena power. They could have gotten Jeffery Williams' banking and financial records. They could have subpoenaed his accountants. They could have gotten all of that to see the money flowing. Did they do it? No. Why didn't they do it? Well, I'm going to argue to you they didn't do it because there was nothing there. If they did it, it would undercut their case about seizing Mr. Williams' assets, about seizing $8 million worth of jewelry that he earned in the music business, about seizing all of those cars, about seizing the ring off of his finger and keeping it. We don't want to see those records because we don't want evidence that he earned all of this from his music and his hard work. No efforts of money and power as part of a conspiracy deriving from this gang. The judge is going to tell you in your instructions, mere association with an enterprise is insufficient by itself to establish a conspiracy to violate the RICO Act. Mere association. And that's what you have here, mere association. A bunch of guys that grew up together, were around each other, and that some of whom were trying to make it out, and some of whom were trying to help others make it out. Mr. Kendrick was trying to make it out. Mr. Kendrick would not let himself be thrown away like happened to Mr. Stevens. So I don't believe there's a conspiracy that's been shown beyond a reasonable doubt. What else has the state not shown? Well, they've not shown a lot, but I'm just going to focus on a few. The state hasn't shown that Demontae Kendrick knowingly and willingly joined this conspiracy, and they must show that. Well, first of all, I understand their difficulty. I understand their problem. How do you show that you knowingly and willingly joined a conspiracy with a criminal purpose when one doesn't exist? So that's their first challenge. That's their first challenge. What did they do to try to show knowing and willing join? Well, he hung out with some guys that did some bad things. He allegedly is part of this YSL gang that's not a gang. And by the way, you heard testimony, Mr. Kendrick was signed to the YSL record label. So I guess he knowingly and willingly signed to the YSL record label, but that is not the same as knowingly and willingly joining a conspiracy. Depending on the outcome of this case, at least to this point, being signed to a record label, even a rap record label, is not a crime in the US. What else hasn't the state shown? They haven't shown a pattern of racketeering activity. And the key here is pattern. And part of the key to pattern is there has to be interrelatedness. And I'm sorry about the legalese. I promise I am. But I have to talk about it. These acts have to be interrelated. And instead, what you've seen for a year of your time is isolated incident after isolated incident. We're going to throw everything against the wall and hope something sticks. But even if a few things stick, if they're not interrelated, it is not a pattern. So I believe that when you look at all of the evidence, you're going to need to go back to the jury room. And I believe once you deliberate, you're going to find that Mr. Kendrick is not guilty beyond a reasonable doubt of conspiracy to violate RICO. The last charges are easier to discuss and we'll go faster. Every count, counts 57, 58, 61, and 63. These are the last 4 counts against Mr. Kendrick. All of those relate or based upon drugs and guns found at Jeffery Williams' house. Not a single witness, photograph, fingerprint, lab test, DNA, everything you can imagine. Nothing shows that Mr. Kendrick possessed any of those guns and drugs. Nothing. When they arrested Mr. Kendrick that day, did they test his clothing for any type of samples that there might be drugs or? No, nothing, nothing. You didn't see any of that. Why was he arrested? Why is he arrested for drugs and guns? It's merely his presence at Jeffery Williams' house that day. The judge is also going to tell you this, and bear with me while I read this, because it's too long to memorize. You are not authorized to find a person who was merely present at the scene of the commission of a crime at the time was committed guilty of consent in and concurrence in the commission of the crime unless the evidence shows beyond a reasonable doubt that such person committed the alleged crime, helped in the actual perpetration of the crime, or participated in the criminal endeavor. They're trying to show Mr. Kendrick guilty of those crimes just by being at Jeffery Williams' house. I don't know about y'all, but when someone invites me over to their home, I do not ask before I go there, do you have drugs stashed away throughout your house? I do not ask before I go there, have you got a machine gun hidden under the couch in the basement? Have you got guns stashed in your cabinets? I don't ask that. And when I get to their house, I don't go looking for those things. Why did they charge him with this? Why did they charge Mr. Kendrick with this? Because, as I have told you, and from what you could see in this courtroom, Mr. Kendrick has done nothing but work on his music, but they have to drag him in. They have to suck him in to this vortex caused by their relentless, ridiculous pursuit of Jeffery Williams. It is offensive and it is absurd. And presumably they felt they needed to do it to help out on the RICO case and to help get Jeffery Williams. Briefly turning to each of those counts, count 57, participation in criminal street gang activity. That is purely based on his alleged possession of marijuana and a firearm. But again, no one got up here and said Mr. Kendrick possessed any of the firearms or any of the drugs at the house. Now, here's what the state is likely to say. This is what I'm anticipating. Possession can be one of 2 ways, and you will hear the judge instruct you on this as well. It can be actual possession, you're holding it, or constructive possession. Constructive possession requires the state to show that Mr. Kendrick intended to possess those weapons, intended to possess those drugs. So when the state tells you that, I want you to please remember what I've just told you and think, what witnesses have you seen? What evidence has been presented that Mr. Kendrick intended to possess those weapons or those drugs or that marijuana? Nothing. Zero. Donut hole, nothing burger. The other 3 counts, 58, 61, 63, those are all marijuana or firearms. And again, I don't need to repeat myself. While I have had wonderful help from Ms. Hingerty and Mr. Apt on this case, for the most part, Demontae only has me up here representing him. The state has an army of prosecutors, investigators, law enforcement to assist them. So, I mean, Demontae only has David. And I just pray that I have done my best to slay this giant Goliath that is pursuing him. The state has not met their high burden of showing guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. I would even argue the state hasn't met these lower standards either. It's just not been done. I think when you go back there and deliberate, you'll come up with the same idea, the same conclusion. This case against Mr. Kendrick should have never been brought. That same Saturday night when I saw The Mentalist, a friend was saying to me, well, your problem is that the state has the last word. You're going to get up and talk to the jury, but then the state gets to go again. And they're great lawyers from the state. And they may not remember what you say. They're going to have the last word. And I said, no, you are wrong. You are wrong. The state does not have the last word. The jury has the last word. You guys have the last word. Each of you will decide the fate of Mr. Kendrick. Each of you individually will decide whether the state has met their high burden on each of these counts and on each of the elements of the counts to show that he committed this beyond a reasonable doubt. When you go back and deliberate, I believe that you can go back and send the message that targeting people, fixating on individuals who have managed to climb out of their circumstance, attacking people for their music and their lyrics and their art is wrong, is wrong. Targeting only people of color for their music and lyrics is wrong. Winnie Lee, when he was on the stand, told you, he told all of us, even though I am a Black man, not everything I write about is true or autobiographical. He has an imagination. Mr. Kendrick has an imagination. He has things to say about what he sees in the world around him, as does Winnie Lee, as does Jeffery Williams. And the use of lyrics and artistic expression against individuals is wrong, it's un-American, and it shows the desperation of the state that they have to reach to that level in order to try to make a case against Mr. Kendrick. You can show that maybe, just maybe, we really do believe it when we tell people that through hard work, you can pull yourself up from wherever you came from. And that we, as Americans, as people, we believe in redemption. So I ask you to please remember that during and after the state's closing, to remember that when you're deliberating, to remember that each of you individually gets to make that decision of guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. So I'm going to ask for the sale, because that is what you're supposed to do, right? And I'm going to ask you to go back there, deliberate, and come back with not guilty verdicts for Mr. Kendrick on all the charges against him. Thank you for your attention. Thank you for the last year of your life that you sacrificed to be here and fulfill your roles as citizens. I really appreciate it.
All right, let's take a short break, which is going to be our last break of the day. Then we will hear from the state again. Then I will release y'all for the day. We'll come back tomorrow and give you the instructions. So let's take, maybe a 10, 15-minute break. It's gonna be our last break for the day as well. doing the argument. Where'd she go? She needs to, she's getting here. Ms. Hilton, I know that you're, batting cleanup, I guess, but keep in mind, they're gonna be watching the clock. They're not used to staying until 7 or 8. Let's hope she doesn't do that one, but yeah. Thank you very much. All right, Ms. Hilton.
Good evening. I know y'all tired. And I get the harsh responsibility of closing you out for the next couple of, for a little while. I'm gonna tell you how long. For a little while. And I just want you all to bear with me and bear with us as we speak. Mr. Atkins told you this morning that this is kind of like that marathon. They were kind of at that last spot, right before the finish line. And I know this has been a long trial, and like every one of us has said, we thank you for your sacrifice. We know that we have taken you away from family, friends, trips, work. Maybe y'all didn't want to go to work, but from work to be here with us. And so we're going to ask of you just to bear with us for a little while longer. Now, Mr. Weinstein said something very interesting as he closed. He said something to the effect of, the state should be ashamed of themselves for targeting people of color. And I was a little taken aback. Why? Because I am a person of color. The majority of this prosecution team are people of color. And we are not targeting people of color. We are targeting gang members who decided to wreak havoc on communities in Fulton County. And the ironic part of the communities that they violated were those communities were communities of color. See, no one rarely talks about the victims in this case. But the victims in this case, most of them are people of color. Because in Fulton County, you don't get to victimize anyone in our county without being held accountable for your actions. And what we're going to ask of you today is hold both of these defendants accountable for their actions. because they are guilty of every single crime for which they are charged. But as both Mr. Shard and Mr. Weinstein were talking, I was reminded that what is right is often forgotten by what is convenient. And see, in this case for them, it's convenient to blame Kenneth Copeland for the murder of Demontae Thomas. Well, we're gonna talk about that. That doesn't even make sense. For them, it is convenient to tell you that we have not met the elements of RICO because they're just not a gang. They just get YSL tatted on them. They just get snakes tatted on them just for the fun of it. That's convenient for them, but that is not the truth. And while it may have taken some time for us to get all that evidence out here, it took a while. Some days the evidence came out good. Some days the evidence came out bad. Some days I had to take a couple of breaks. At the end of the day, the evidence shows what is clear. YSL is a gang. YSL is an enterprise. They commit criminal street gang activity. They murdered Demontae Thomas, murdered Chanel Drinks, and they're guilty. And then I'm also reminded of a story that a colleague told me a long time ago about someone who worked as a border patrol officer. And this person worked as a border patrol officer for a number of years. And while they were working border patrol, a guy would come through the border with a red bike every day. And every day that that person would come through with a red bike, he had a basket on the front of the bike. And inside of the basket was some food. Now, every day, this guy would come through, and the border patrol officer thought something was kind of fishy, but he never found anything. He always found baskets with sand inside. This happened for a few months. Well, one day, the border patrol guy was leaving that job. He was going on to a new job, and he was at a bar. And who walked into the bar? The guy with the red bike. So the border patrol guy says to him, I'm getting ready to leave my job, but I'm interested. There's something was fishy about that red bike. What were you doing with that red bike? And the guy was like, nothing, don't worry about it. Congratulations to you. The night proceeded. The border patrol guy got some more drinks in his system, said, you know what? Can you tell me about this red bike? Because something just doesn't seem right. Every time I would see the red bike, it would have sand in the basket. Tell me what was going on. Guy said, don't worry about it. Finally, it's the end of the night. Border patrol guy is really sophisticated. He said, just tell me, I'm not going to remember what happened. You're not going to get in trouble. Tell me what you were doing. And what the guy said was, you know how every day you were focused on the basket with the sand? I was smuggling in a new red bike every single day. So you were so focused on what was in the basket that you was missing what was right in front of you. And if you listen to what the defense counsel told you for the last about 3.5 hours that they argued, you're gonna miss what's right in front of you. So what's sand in the basket in this case? First things first, stolen jewelry. APD, somebody stole this watch. No one stole the watch. The watch is left back in the house, but they want you to focus on this watch because if you focus on the watch, you're gonna miss the evidence in front of you. Talked about no reports. Vimberito, she didn't write any reports. Well, what she told you is she wrote her information in the affidavits. Affidavits that get sworn before a judge. Probably better than reports because a judge has to actually read that information. But if you focus on the fact that Vimberito didn't write any reports, you're gonna miss what's right in front of you. Mr. Weinstein talked about length of time. We talked about it. Knowledge of co-conspirators. I think at one point in time, Mr. Shard said, Mr. Minor, who stabbed Lucci, he doesn't know Mr. Kendrick or Mr. Stillwell? Maybe not. But he knows Khalif Adams, who's the one who helped set up stabbing Lucci. Khalif Adams knows those two. Well, knows Mr. Stillwell. Khalif Adams knows Garlington. And so some way, somehow though, Mr. Stillwell knew on February 9th that Lucci got stabbed. Well, how does he know that? How's that in a text message? That wasn't broadcast to the world. So this idea that just because Mr. Myrick doesn't know him specifically does not mean that they're not guilty of the crime of which they committed. They talk about witness credibility, specifically about experts and what our experts say. But if you go back to any of our experts' testimony, Belknap, Dennis, Gaither, Underwood, the things that they talked about, there were examples of it. They talked about YSL as a hybrid gang. It was Blood and Crips, and they kind of got together. Well, we know that's true because Martinez Arnold is a Crip. Some of them, Mr. Williams was a Blood. You saw when he talked about sex, money, murder. You see them hanging out together. You see them committing crimes together. Mr. Kendrick and Mr. Arnold in a car with guns on their way to Trestle Tree. We can infer, go shoot it up. That's what they talked about when it says a hybrid gang. They talked about the music, and we're going to get to the music in a minute. They talked about the fact that gang members use their music in order to brag, promote what they've done in the gang. And we'll see examples of that in a moment. We talked about your duty earlier today, but again, just to be reminded, you're supposed to be a fair and impartial juror, honestly seeking the truth. You are not to seek doubt. So when you go in the back, you're supposed to say to yourself, what happened on January 10th? What is the truth about that? And is there evidence towards the truth? That is what you're here for. Seek the truth, you follow the law, and you deliberate. Now, I want to tell you this. If you go to the back to deliberate, and one of your numbers says, I'm not deliberating, I'm going into the bathroom, I'm not doing any of this. You need to bring that to the deputy's attention so they can bring it to the court's attention. Because you have a duty to deliberate. A duty to sit down, evaluate the facts, evaluate the evidence, and apply it to the law. So let's talk about the evidence of defendant's guilt. So earlier this morning, Mr. Adkins talked to you about count 57, participation in criminal street gang activity. He talked to you about count 1, conspiracy to violate the RICO Act, and counts 50 and 51. I'm not going to harp on that again, but I thought it interesting when Mr. Weinstein said, well, we haven't proved count 50 and 51 and 57. You know, the state, they're all dressed in red. We are. Red's probably my favorite color. But you know the one thing that's different? We don't do criminal gang activity. And the court's going to define what that is. See, we're not here because people wear the same colors. They can wear all the greens they want. They can wear all the snakes they want. If they all want to tattoo YSL on them, that's fine. We told it's not a crime to be a part of a gang. The crime is when you start doing criminal street gang activity, like murdering Donovan Thomas, murdering Chanel Drinks, murdering Jamari Holmes. That is what the violation is, not being a member of a gang. So you'll see, and we said it again, that on the left-hand side were the charges for Mr. Kendrick, on the right-hand side were the charges for Mr. Stillwell, and in the middle is what they were both charged with. So Mr. Kendrick is charged with possession of marijuana with intent to distribute. That's from May 9, 2022, when he was found running from Mr. Williams' house. Remember, the officer came and said that they both must have been out of breath and he ran from the house. And the drugs and the guns that were found inside of the house, the marijuana and the guns that were found in the house. So in order to prove this, we have to show that the defendant possessed with the intent to distribute any amount of marijuana. Marijuana includes all parts of the plant. What it does not include is the hemp products and all those other technical terms that I'm not going to try to pronounce for you tonight. We have to show that he possessed it, and it has possessed the marijuana or the firearm. We're going to talk about the firearm in a moment. Possession must be actual, constructive, sold, or joint. So we're going to tell you that it's not actual possession. No one caught him with the marijuana in the hand. We're going to talk about constructive possession. At the time of the alleged offense, he did not have direct physical control over the marijuana or firearm, but did knowingly have both the ability and the intention to exercise control over the marijuana. We know he doesn't have sole possession, so we'll focus on joint possession. Defendants share possession of marijuana or firearms with at least one other person. What evidence do we have of it? And I know Mr. Wine said we didn't have any evidence. We do. Pictures are evidence. That's direct evidence like we talked about earlier. This is the side of the home of Mr. Williams. That's the money counter that was sitting next to the Tupperware bowl full with the marijuana. That's the Tupperware bowl full with the marijuana. That's the more marijuana that was in that cabinet in that same kitchen, right across from where the Tupperware bowl of the marijuana was. And those are the two guns that were found inside that area. Now, ladies and gentlemen, you heard the testimony that SWAT, when they came, did not immediately make entry into the house. It was like announced, it was loud. So I submit to you that they had the opportunity to put stuff away, to hide stuff, because they didn't just come in immediately, ladies and gentlemen. So you can take that into consideration as you deliberate. Possession of a firearm during the commission of a felony. So the state must prove that the defendant had a firearm on his person or within arm's reach while committing a crime against or involving another person. For Mr. Stillwell, it's murder. For Mr. Kendrick, it's the possession of marijuana with intent to distribute. So how do we show this? On the left is Shannon Stillwell. That is Mr. Drinks inside of the vehicle. We know that Mr. Drinks was shot with a 40 caliber gun, possibly of a Glock, and we're going to talk about this Glock in a moment. So you can infer, although we do not have the gun, that Mr. Stillwell possessed the gun that shot and killed Mr. Drinks because he's dead and because we have the bullet. You can infer that that's that circumstantial evidence. Your direct evidence is someone is deceased. You have bullets. We know those bullets come from a Glock firearm. So the only way you can infer that the shooter, Mr. Stillwell, possessed a firearm. Mr. Kendrick, again, you have the firearms inside of the house at the time when the house was raided. There were two found inside of that cabinet. There was the one that's found on this counter. Now, they're also both charged with possession of a firearm by a convicted felon. You have to show for Mr. Stillwell, he has 2 counts. And interestingly enough, I was listening, Mr. Shard never talked about count 64. So, but we're going to talk about count 64. But count 52 is that he's a convicted felon and he had a firearm when he murdered Chanel Drinks. And in count 64, which is when he was apprehended, the gun that was found in the middle of the road, that we charged him with that weapon as well. And then again with Mr. Kendrick, that there were guns and drugs at Allison Drive on May 9th. And let me also say that in the indictment, possession of a firearm by a convicted felon is going to be a lesser included of what is charged. What is charged is a different charge, but possession of a firearm by a convicted felon is a lesser charge, and the court is going to instruct you, and you can find both of them guilty so long as you believe that both of them possess a firearm and they have been previously convicted of a felony. What do you have in evidence? You have State's Exhibit 60G and State's Exhibit 30Q. Both of those are the indictments of Mr. Stillwell, which he was charged with and convicted of a felony. So that is the felony that we're saying he should not have been in violation of, or he should not have possessed the firearm. As I just discussed, because he's a convicted felon, he should have never had a firearm when he murdered Chanel Drinks. For count 64, what do we have? Remember, this is on March 17th, after they fled from the Chick-fil-A. And remember, Trooper Campbell came in and said that he found the gun in the middle of the road. You saw the dash cam video when he kind of turned around and said, and found this gun. Then we brought in Mr. Stillwell's former girlfriend at the time, Taisha Alexander. She said that she aborted the gun. That was her gun. That gun came back to Ms. Alexander when we were able to compare the serial numbers on both the gun that was collected and the receipt from Arrowhead Pond. And further, we played these jail calls, wiretap calls for you.
Hello? Yeah, I don't know, trying to call, like, give me play on IP tape to the Baba house.
Yeah,
Why have he in IP tape if he in a rental legit?
yeah.
He got my legit gun.
So the fact that she says he got my legit gun, which is that gun right here, he should never have ever even been in possession of it.
I don't know what it is. I don't know what's going on.
I don't know what's going on either, cause usually they'll call, like, how he got my gun.
Yeah.
They'll call and be like, come get your gun, but they ain't even call me. So I don't know if where my gun is, I don't know what's going on.
And again, this phone call was done on March 17th, the day he got arrested. The day Mr. Stillwell got arrested. Now for Mr. Kendrick, you have in evidence Exhibit 487 BB, which is a certified copy of conviction of Mr. Kendrick. And again, because he's a convicted felon, he should not have been in constructive possession of any of these guns that are inside the home. So now, based upon what we have shown you, they are guilty of, right now, count 1, count 50, 51, 52, 54, 57, 58, 61, 63, and 64. So let's spend some time on the murders, because that is what we need to talk about. So for the murders, Mr. Stillwell is charged with count 2 and count 49, which is Donovan Thomas Jr. and Chanel Drinks. And Mr. Kendrick's charged solely with count 2, which is the death of Donovan Thomas Jr. You're going to hear the court read you an instruction about intent. Intent is every essential element of any crime must be proved by the state beyond a reasonable doubt. It may be shown in many ways, provided that you, the jury, believe that it existed from the proven facts before you. It may be inferred from the proven circumstances or by acts and conduct, or it may be in your discretion inferred when it is the natural and necessary consequence of the act. Intent does not mean an intention to violate the law or to violate a criminal statute, but it means simply the intention to commit the act that is prohibited by the statute. So what are the elements that we have to prove for murder? That Mr. Stillwell and Mr. Kendrick caused the death of another person, here, Donovan Thomas and Chanel Drake, unlawfully and with malice aforethought. What is malice? It is not necessarily ill will or hatred, rather it is the unlawful intent to kill. You may find malice when the circumstances show that the defendant acted with deliberate intention to unlawfully take the life of another person, or where there does not appear to be significant provocation and all the circumstances show an abandoned and malignant heart. You often hear about premeditation. Some of you like watching these crime shows. The state does not have to prove premeditation to prove murder. So we don't have to sit and say you planned it out and you all mapped it out and that you knew you were going to kill Donovan Thomas or Chanel Drinks right at that moment. If a killing is done with malice, it is murder regardless of how briefly the malicious intent existed. So when Demontae Kendrick rode by the barbershop and they saw Donovan Thomas sitting outside with his friends, and I'm going to submit to you, they started calling saying, yo, Donovan's out here. Let's go do this. That's enough. Or with Chanel Drinks, when Shannon and Garlington are sitting in the car and they're backed in and they see Mr. Drinks pull in and they realize, oh snap, that's the dude from the Shell Cal post. And they see him walking up and they decide at that moment they're going to get him because they're going to get revenge, they're going to get back. That's enough right there. Doesn't have to be days planned. Within moments, that is enough. No specific length of time is required for malice to arise in the defendant's mind. It may be formed in a moment, and instantly a fatal wound may be inflicted. If malice was in the defendant's mind at the time of the act of the killing and moves the defendant to do it, That is enough for the killing to be murder. Now, motive. The law says we don't have to prove motive. You wanna know why? Because oftentimes I can't get into the mind of why someone wants to murder somebody. But here, and we're gonna talk about it, we have some evidence of motive. Any evidence of motive has been admitted for your use and determine the defendant's state of mind at the time of the crime. So you heard Mr. Agnes talk earlier about parties to a crime. I'm not going to go over all the principles again, but he gave you the example of the bank robbery, right? Everyone who is a part of the crime is responsible. So in this case, for Donovan Thomas, Mr. Kendrick is robber. Mr. Kendrick, the state's belief, the state's theory, is that he alerted them about where Donovan Thomas was, because he was the one that was at the Texaco. He's the one that waited 40-something minutes for the Infinity to pull up. He's the one who got out of the Bonneville and went to the Infinity. He's just as guilty as the ones who pulled the trigger, Nard and Mr. Jackson. He's just as responsible. And that's what parties to a crime says. Every person involved in the murder is just as responsible as the person who pulls the trigger, because you all act together. Now, we have in Chanel Drinks an individual that you kept hearing about, DeMarco Boyer. And someone brought up that DeMarco Boyer isn't on the indictment. Well, this is the law that's going to be instructed to you. Any party to a crime who did not directly commit the crime may be prosecuted for commission of the crime upon proof that the crime was committed and that that person was a party to it, even though the person alleged to have directly committed the crime has not been prosecuted or convicted, has been convicted of a different crime or degree of crime, is not amenable to justice, or has been acquitted. Mr. Boyer's day is for another day. We're not going to talk about Mr. Boyer today. Today, we're going to talk about Mr. Stillwell and Mr. Kendrick. You can look at presence, companionship, and conduct before and after the commission of the alleged offense. And those things may be considered by you in determining whether or not such circumstances, if any, give rise to an inference or the existence of a conspiracy. So what does that mean? You can look at what they did before, what they did during, and what they did after. And for both of those murders, we're going to talk about conduct before, conduct during, and conduct after. So let's talk about Mr. Donovan Thomas Jr. You heard from his mother, you heard from his father. He was from Atlanta, he had kids, he was in a gang, but he had started to kind of try to get into the music business. And he had started doing that by, one, he had a relationship with Rich Homie Quan. Two, he had just put Lucci on, YSL Lucci. So he was trying to kind of turn that mark and do something different. What did you also hear about Donovan Thomas? That on the night that he was gunned down, that he was at the barbershop, getting his hair cut, his brother was there, and what were they getting ready to do? Meet with their daddy to go watch the football game. I think it was the Ravens and the Patriots. Don't quote me if I'm wrong, but I think it was the Ravens and the Patriots. And that's what he was getting ready to do. Spend time with his father. You know that he has a biological brother, but he also has a brother, which Kelvin Watts, who's super close to him, that they are brothers, but not biologically, but they share a brother, so they call themselves brothers. He said he was trying to get in the music industry. That's him with YSL Lucci. That's him with Rich Homie Quan. And so much so that after his death, Lucci had a whole album dedicated to him, Long Live Nut. And we know that Peanuts was his nickname. Now let's go over some timelines, because I think oftentimes we focus just on the murder, but there's some things that led up to that day that is very important for you to consider as you continue to look. So we know in September 2014, Rich Homie Quan's father's barbershop shooting. Now, Mr. Copeland, we're gonna talk about Mr. Copeland, told you on the stand here that him and Threat were responsible for that. YSL members responsible for shooting up the shop of a YFN gang member. Or shoot the father of a is gang associate. Then, if you can recall, in all of the different interviews, majority of them, Mr. Copeland talked about this shooting at the Lakewood gambling house. He talked about it in mostly every interview when he kept on telling them about the history of him and Kelvin. And he talked about the fact that Kelvin had shot up the gambling house and shot up Doug's car. Then he talks about, in multiple interviews, of meeting at Cascade Skating Rink, in which him and Kel were there. Kel wanted Copeland to call Thug so they can maybe squash whatever issue that they had. And that when Thug, Mr. Williams, got on the phone, he asked Kelvin, "Are you gonna pay for my car window?" Kelvin said no. They got into it, and it kept on going. You heard about the January 6th fight at Club Crucial, in which Copeland was jumped at the club. And then upon leaving the club, there was a fight with Bloody J, that some YSL members jumped on Bloody J. And that Kendrick and Arnold, they were arrested when they left the club. And that's going to be important, because when we talk about phone records, while we don't have some phone records from Mr. Kendrick. Then we have the January 8th shooting at TIG Studio, where Rich Homie Quan's purple truck was shot up. There was some alluding to the fact that Copeland did that shooting. I think Quindarius Zachary may have said in his interview that Copeland did that shooting. Then there was that blood meeting the night before the murder. Now, I know that Mr. Sharp played for you the clip in which Copeland says that the blood meeting was about him, but remember, the blood meeting was also about Mr. Williams. And he said that in one of his interviews, that the blood meeting just wasn't about him, but it was about him, Copeland, and Mr. Williams. Then on January 10th, you have the death or the murder of Mr. Donovan Thomas at 330 McDaniel Street. Then you have the retaliatory shootings begin immediately. See, the streets knew what it took the state and the government a long time to figure out. They went directly to who they thought killed Donovan Thomas. They immediately started shooting at Jeffery Williams' family's house and Kenneth Copeland's family's house, because they thought that both of them were in on it. Also, in the late morning hours, early on January 11th, Kenneth Copeland meets with the Atlanta Police Department, and many of the YSL members, they flee to Miami. You have more retaliatory shootings. Then in April, between April and May of 2015, you have the incident at the Dunbar Center where Copeland is found with that gun. They don't arrest him then. He calls Gaither. Gaither speaks to him. They let him go. But once they did more investigation, they got the video surveillance from the Dunbar Center. They arrest him on June 10th. And then that's when he does the 9-hour interview that we'll discuss. In August of 2015 was Quindarius Zachary's interview. In September 2015, Shannon becomes the target of 2 shootings, one at the Green Store, the other one with Ms. Tierra Jones. In October 2015, arrest warrants are taken out for Garlington, Copeland, Sledge, and Stillwell. In November 2015, there was a preliminary hearing. The case was dismissed against Sledge. In 2016, the case was dismissed against Garlington and Copeland, and Stillwell received a bond. Between 2016 and 2018, there was some additional investigation and follow-up, and the indictment came in 2022. We're going to talk more about these dates, but I want to give everyone a general timeline overview. As Mr. Atkins talked to you about earlier, you determine the credibility of the witnesses. And I can't remember if it was Mr. Shard or Mr. Weinstein who said it, but they are absolutely right. We don't choose our witnesses. The witnesses and our victims are chosen by the crimes that are committed. So when you do your gang murder and you brag to your gang member friends that you murdered someone, then the person I have to bring in here to tell you what happened is the gang member friend. And the gang member friend isn't going to want to tell you in front of them what they told the police. So that's why I had to fight. Ms. Love got to fight. We got to argue with them back and forth because now they have to come in here and confront the people that they snitched on in front of them. So, and they know that. They know that none of these witnesses want to come in here and say what they told police. And they're begging on you to say, I don't know, I mean, he did swore an oath in court and said that he told the God's honest truth. Let's go and tell them God's honest truth in this courtroom. Maybe some of the stuff he told was truthful. Here it is. Like he said, he's doing a little bit of truth sometimes. That's what he said, right? So he did that a little bit, and we'll talk about that in a moment. What's going to be important are prior statements. It is important because you as a juror get to determine the witness credibility, right? And this may be affected by you comparing and contrasting the testimony to statements or testimony of that same witness before trial started. You, the jury, can decide whether there's a reasonable explanation for any inconsistency in a witness's pretrial statements or testimony when compared to that same trial testimony. And we're going to actually apply common sense and reason to decide what testimony you believe or do not believe. So let's go through the evolution of Kenneth Rudy Cole. Let's take some time, all right? January 11th. This is hours after the murder. His girlfriend's house just got shot up, and they call him. Thorpe calls the girlfriend to kind of check in on see what's happening with their shooting, and they put Copeland on the phone. See, on January 11th, when he walks inside, he real strong YSL, right? He's not trying to give up his friends. He want to let the police know, I didn't murder. Now, let me tell you something. I didn't murder Donovan Thomas. I'm gonna tell you at my girlfriend's house. I'm gonna tell you I went to the green stove. I went to McDonald's. He's not gonna give you too much information because here he's trying to still protect his friends. That's just common sense. The police don't really know what's going on yet. So when he first goes in, he's trying to protect his friends. But then we get January 28th. See, if y'all remember, y'all, this is after he gets out the shootout on the highway. See, this is after he came from the little pool party and he on his way home and they shoot at him at the highway. And remember, in this interview, he talks about, I believe, Shannon being upset with him because he didn't want to shoot back. So here, he's trying to tell him everything that YFN people are doing to him, but he's still not trying to give up his friends. They were friends. But he's a little frustrated because everyone's blaming him for murdering Donovan Thomas, and everyone's shooting back at him, shooting him, and he didn't do anything. Then we get February 20th. Now this was the worst one because that's when he's trying to come out the house to take his baby to the hospital, and they come down the street shooting at him. So now he's like, they are shooting at me, they shooting at my baby and my girl. Look, this too much. And he tells them about what happened. Again, this is the interview where he really didn't want to give up who shot at him. He knew who did it, but see that gang street code is he still didn't want to give up the person who shot at him and his baby. And that's when Kirk was like, you're not going to tell me who just shot at you and your baby? Then the next day was February 21st. They had arrested him for a violation of probation. He was upset because they arrested him on a violation of probation. And Gaither talks to him, one, about the shooting that had happened the day before, and trying to get more information about the murder, trying to figure out what is going on. What is going on with this back and forth? Because by this time, and ladies and gentlemen, we're not going to go through that whole litany, we're going to call it Operation Planner shooting, but you heard evidence of all those shootings that were happening back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And they're trying to get a grasp of what is happening. And then we get to the 9-hour interview. So what happened between February and June? A lot. We got some back and forth shootings. Remember, Mr. Copeland went to jail for that violation of probation. He came out. He had went to Henry County for a little while. And then on June 10th, he gets arrested for the gun that he had at the Dunbar Center back in May. And what's going on here? Mr. Copeland is tired. He been getting shot at. His family been getting shot at. Homes getting shot up. Remember Kenneth Hurst or Kenny Boo's house? His sister-in-law, his sister's child's father's home has been broken, getting shot at. And Shannon and Mr. Williams not talking to him. Remember Shannon, and he thought Mr. Williams was trying to kill him. That's everything he talks about in this 9-hour interview. And let me say this, if for some reason y'all want to watch all these interviews again, y'all can. Y'all just gotta let them know. I don't know if you want to sit there and watch a 9-hour interview again, but if you wanted to, you can. But in this interview, he is at the place where enough is enough for him. And I'm going to tell you about Mr. Copeland. I'm going to tell you about Quindarius Avery. They are self-preservationists. What do I mean by that? They're going to not talk about what they've done because they don't want to go to jail. But if telling on them is going to get me out of jail, I'm going to tell you what's happened. Because I don't want to go to jail. He's absolutely right. He did not want to go to jail. But he's not going to lie to the police about what they did. He's going to minimize what he's done. And that's what he did in this interview for 9 hours. He minimized his involvement in some things, but he told everything that they did. And if you don't believe what he told the police, well, let's listen to what he told his girlfriend on the jail call.
Right. Yeah. So. Yeah. Yeah. We try to do it every week. Come on, one day. Yeah. True, no error for him.
So in that call to his girlfriend, to the love of his life at the time, he tells them, I need D to come in so they can move, so they can know what I told them is true. They had to verify what I said. So when he came in and said, I will finesse the police, I will lie to them. No, because you wanted them to verify what you told them. And we're going to talk about how the police and Mike Sprinkle was able to verify what he told them. Let's listen to this June 16th, 2015 call.
They can go out to work, all right?
So what is he saying there? Why you put my name in the song? He know who did it. Because they all know who did it. They knew that it was Yak, Dua, Shannon, and Nard. And Kendrick is, Copeland is upset because he's like, why you put my name in the song? Put the ones who did it in the song. So they can stop targeting me. Now, let's talk about his trial testimony. You know, I actually do like rap music, contrary to popular belief. And there is an artist, Young G, and he has a song called Put On. And I'm gonna tell you what Copeland and Zachary did while they testified here was they put on for YSL. They came in here acting all types of foolishness. And that's because they wanted to show their gang member friends, look, I'm still part of the conspiracy. Y'all know I snitched on y'all back in 2015, but I'm gonna try to help y'all out as best as I can. And that's what they did this entire time. They friends. They've been friends for a long time. They wear the same clothes. They lay together. What makes you think that Demontae, when he got into that car at McDonald's and said, yo, let me tell y'all what they just did. Let me tell you what our homie, our boy for the last couple of years just did. They just killed Nut because Kendrick wasn't around. He was sleeping at his girlfriend's house. So he missed the action. So you don't think when Demontae get in the car, he's not going to say, yo, let me tell you what Shannon just did, Joe. They friends. And they want you to believe that Demontae did not tell Copeland what happened moments after it happened. That don't even make sense. And we're going to ask you your common sense. This is them. And these weren't all taken in 2015 because some of these are older pictures. They look super young. This is how long they've been friends. Now, it was interesting when Mr. Shard asked, why we show you this video from 2009? Let me tell you why. Because Quindarius been around for a long time. Quindarius been around since 2009. So Quindarius knows about what's happening. See, we didn't just bring you stuff. I know some days you're like, why does the state bring me a video from 2009 in the park? It's to show the evolution of their relationships. Quindarius is a little bit different than Copeland. Because he's been around Mr. Williams much longer than Copeland has ever been in the picture. See, Mr. Copeland started coming around in 2014. Mr. Zachary's loyalty is a little bit different. He's been around since 2009. So when Zachary tells you in his interview, Doug ain't know nothing about that murder. Yes, he did. But his loyalty is a little different because he's been around. 2012, that's Mr. Zachary. You want to know why we showed you the video of them outside in the apartment complex? To show their association. Again, Zachary been around again for a long time. He real better than it. He rocked through YSL. So he had a motive to lie for Jeffery Williams that Kenneth doesn't have as much of. In his interview. See, when Quindarius interviewed, he asked to come and speak to the police. And you're gonna watch his interview, because what both of them do in their interviews, both Copeland and Quindarius, and this is how you know they were telling the truth, they would correct the officers. If the officers were repeating something that was wrong, they would say, no, I didn't say it like that. I said it like this. That's what they would do. That's how you know that what they were trying to tell them, they were trying to be as truthful as they could so that they would get it right. They, mean the police, would get it right. And again, same thing. He come in here talking about he wanted to take one of the investigators out, all types of nonsense. But again, putting on for YSL. And again, he's been around. They friends. They friends. And why would they lie on their friends? If they knew to make up stuff and make up lies, why would you lie and say your friends committed a murder? That doesn't make sense. Why lie? You could just say anybody made up the murder. If you were just lying, you don't want anybody to verify what you were saying, you could have said anybody committed the murder. But that's not what they did. So there were a lot of different witnesses that came in about Donovan Thompson murder, but we're going to talk specifically about these individuals. Investigator Thorpe, he was the original detective on the case. He took out those arrest warrants in October, and that was after talking to an individual by the name of Spencer Wright. He then turned his file over to Mike Sprinkle. Then we have both Dennis and Gaither. They were both just because of the back and forth that they were investigating, just ended up talking a lot about the murder with all these different individuals. And then you have Kenneth Copeland and Quindarius Zachary. And then what did Mike Sprinkle tell you? When he got the file, he reviewed it, and the first thing he did was realize that Spencer Wright was lying and said, okay, I have to get rid of this information. And it was something that Mr. Shard said, which I found interesting. Mr. Shard said that Nicholas Robinson, aka Spencer Wright, is an example of individuals who will say anything just to get out of jail. But the difference between Nicholas Robinson and Quindarius and Kenneth Copeland is that Mr. Sprinkle couldn't verify what Nicholas Robinson said, but he was able to verify what Quindarius and what Kenneth Copeland said. So did Mike Sprinkle corroborate Kenneth Copeland and Quindarius Zachary? Emphatically, yes. So let's talk about the activity before the murder. And some of these are the videos, but there was no dispute about the Lakewood shooting in Club Crucial. And what you have in both of those interviews is that both Copeland and Zachary actually sat and talked about those shootings. I'm not gonna play the video for you, just in an abundance of time, but we know that those two things at least were not disputed. So let's talk about the day of and the days after the murder. So what did Copeland tell you about that morning?
So when I woke up, they know that she already told me to go to the mom. So I woke up, she said, "Yeah, I went with it." She like, "Oh, I don't know, she don't want have another head, you're going home here." I'm like, "Hey, you got it?" Well, I was very sure. So I don't know, this is near where we're at. Yeah, so this is right tonight. So after this, I had that night where it had.
What did the phone records tell you? I know that's kind of small, but you'll have the phone records in the back. That between 6:37 and 7:26, Copeland's phone was in the area of his girlfriend's house, right? That's QR's Copeland's girlfriend's residence, which was on Maury. His phone was pinging in that area, and that's between 6:37 and 7:26. If you can recall, the 911 call for the murder came in at 7:22. At 7:26, he is still at his girlfriend's house after the murder. So this notion, when they say, well, Kenneth Copeland did it, I know somebody who could have done it, well, it wasn't Kenneth Copeland. the person who did it is Stillwell, Yak, Nard, and Duane. Because Ken Cole was at his girlfriend's house at 726. Then he says he went to the green store. What did the phone records tell you? He went to the green store. He's at the green store at 728. Between 728, he's at the green store. And then he travels down towards the McDonald's, like he told him. And here's the thing, ladies and gentlemen, about cooperation and phone records. He doesn't know we're gonna pull the phone records later. He doesn't know that Mike Sprinkle in 2016, almost 8 months after this, that we're gonna pull the phone records to see whether or not what he's saying is true. I know he came in here and told me, I got 2 phones, I had 2 phones, and all this other stuff. He didn't have 2 phones. Or if he had 2 phones, the main phone is the phone that he was calling his girlfriend on. You can look at the records will show who he's talking to. He's talking to his brother and his girlfriend on the phone he's talking about. Cooperation, I'm not gonna play it, but he says, if you just heard him say he goes out to the McDonald's. So we talked about that white nitro. Ladies and gentlemen, that is from the Dexter Montgomery shooting. What is that? That's the white nitro that Nard and DK came in from OG Bentley's house. So is it ironic that, oh my goodness, OG Bentley has a white Dodge nitro? That small fact is corroborated. He talks about getting the call from Antonio Sledge.
I got a call, I'm so big, I'm like, but she knows she got shot. I had to earn, but like, man, like, you know his name is Spearman, I know he's Spearman, but I'm telling him, like, I think he got told.
And what I'll say is, we'll just go back just very quickly. He told you that he FaceTimed with Antonio Sledge. We know that FaceTimes don't come up on records, on phone records, but that entire night, him, Antonio Sledge, and Zachary are in communication. What you will see is none of those 3 people rarely talk to another group of individuals that we're going to talk about next. So again, things are corroborated that Copeland is saying. Here he's going to talk about that everybody went to Jeffery Williams' condo.
So the one guy in the car, he stopped talking. So we were getting spilled. Where are they following y'all? Yeah, nah, they don't follow them. Okay, y'all follow this. Yeah, but when he told me, I didn't follow it. But I said, you even got told. I'm trying to keep these, I should have said, well, no. Boom. So we followed that to George. they pointed to a dinar, yeah. So I'm like, what happened? He's like, what? So first thing I say, what? Hell no. I ain't gonna.
So here you'll have these phone records in the back. This shows phone activity near Mr. Williams' condo between that time of 7:31 and 11:22. Again, he talks about the condo. And remember in this call, in this interview, he first talked to Gaither and the ATF agent. Then later, Thorpe came in, he kind of repeats what happened, right? And that's what is going on, but again, consistently talking about being around the condo. They both talk about going to Miami after the murder.
This is the same guy. You got to keep this right all the time. So, man, like the people that drive around, he called them, and the person got him around is a personal, like, personal. So he and him would drive him straight to Florida, to like him, Doug, his sister, a girl,
So that's them both talking about them going down to Miami. Now, in court, that's probably one thing that they talked about, that they all went to Miami. But they all said they went for this concert in Miami. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we showed you all the flyers, and there's no flyer in Miami for January 10th, 11th, 12th, 13th, 14th, 15th, 16th, 17th. The only flyer in Miami or in Florida was in Tampa Bay. So the question becomes, why are y'all going to Florida right after Donovan Thomas's murder? To flee. Because YSL knew what they did. And they had to get up out of Dodge. And they went down to Birdman's house to lay low until things, maybe some of the dust starts to settle. And we had the phone records to show you all that they all went to Miami, all the different phone records in Miami after the murder, and the times that they all went after the murder. Now, we talked about the Grand Infinity. They both discussed, well, Copeland said there was Thug that rented the Grand Infinity. Zachary, I told you his loyalty is a little bit different. He didn't want to say a Thug rented the Grand Infinity. He talked about it was a me. But we both know that this Grand Infinity was rented. And I won't play the video for you, but there are the two clips. If you want to play it later, you can play it. And how was that corroborated? Mr. Sprinkle found a Hertz rental car record in order to corroborate, is what Mr. Copeland said accurate? Was there a rented gray vehicle? Almost a year later, he finds the rental car. That is corroboration of what Kenneth Copeland said. He literally took everything that Kenneth Copeland says and said, can I corroborate this? And that's what he did. Now let's talk about who they both said. Now remember, Copeland is in June, Zachary is in August.
So who was in the car? This was this driver on paper. This was a deep broke story. He said, I think he said all of the huge shadows. And he said, they rolled past the same nurse standing outside. They went somewhere and changed clothes. Now, they know it was. I dropped Shannon D out there door. I had went home my big mom. And then Doug
Copeland in June. Here's Zach in August.
This is all what Shannon is telling me. So, it's both. Shannon had told, but this Shannon, what Shannon told me first. So Shannon, they both from the same girl. Where were you guys when Shannon was telling you this, and what day was it? Same day or day after? Same night. Shannon, I walked into, I just walked in, so I just pulled up at the house. And Shannon was go over her house. And all the boys were going out the gun, like, he like, looking at some gun up there, he wants some gun. Right. Wants to have them handgun. Then he wants some gun, and goes to school. So he went there, I'm put it. And Shannon, me and Shannon started talking. Wants some serious, he ain't over there, man. Right. He ain't over there, nothing got killed. Now, he knew they could have killed, but he ain't over there, they're like, some talk, some movie. That's what I heard. And then Shannon tell me the story. Say they was going to be pushing, but they pulled up and seen nothing. Say they had to roll back around. And then started shooting up. So yeah, so
He said it was Yak, Nard, and Duwop. This is two different interviews. Copeland is telling them what Demontae told him, and Zachary is telling the police what Stillwell and Yak told him. But how we have the same people? Yak, Nard, Duwop, Stillwell. That does not change. That's corroboration of each other. Two different interviews, two different times, saying the same people. Ladies and gentlemen, that's evidence. That ain't a coincidence. And remember what Copeland said, which I found interesting. When they asked, do you remember what gas station? He's like, I don't know what gas station. How would he know that Yak was at the gas station and that they circled the block and pulled up and saw Donovan outside? If they didn't tell him that. He didn't even know what gas station they were at. But what did Mike Sprinkle do? He said, well, let me go pull the gas station footage and see if I can corroborate what he's saying. And that's exactly what he did. He pulled up the January 10th Texaco gas station and see when the car pulled into the gas station, the Bonneville. And in that same interview, they asked him, well, what kind of car was Yak in initially? He tells them it was a Bonneville. How would he know? He doesn't know that we're going to find a surveillance video. But they want you to believe Kenneth is lying? For what? You have Yak going inside the gas station. That's him in the gas station. They sit at Texaco from 6:44 to 7:15. They wait for the girlfriend to come. And when the girlfriend comes, that's about the same time that the Infinity pulls up. What you waiting for 30 minutes at the gas station for? Who waits at the gas station that long? You had to meet Bushi at that gas station? What did Reginald Hendricks tell you? YSL folks don't hang around out there. They get their gas, they get on. If they even get gas over there, because that's not their territory. Their territory is Cleveland Avenue. So why are you sitting there for, I don't do math, well, what was it, almost 40 minutes? But they want you to believe he's just lying. For what? Then that's when the Infinity pulls up. And on the video, Yak walks over to the car. Now, I know Mr. Shar said, well, my client ain't on the video. Well, we just can't see him on the video. I submit he in the car. Then they both leave at the same time, and they both turn right on Northside Drive. Now, this is the video. We'll speed it up. And matter of fact, from the still shots, you can see kind of the movement. And I wish I can't pause it because it's running. You see where they came, y'all? They came down McDaniel. Well, what's right about here? It's the barber shop. I know Mr. Wines, you try to say it's a block away. It ain't a block away. Literally, when you go out here, you look up the street, you see the barber shop. It's not a block away. It's yards away. So they had a vantage point to see them when he's driving down McDaniel Street. alerts them. Kendrick. If Kendrick didn't tell them that he saw Donovan, maybe we wouldn't be here today on a murder charge. He did that. He's the one who alerted them. That's why he's just as guilty as the ones who shot. This is then when we sped through the video. So now it's about 9:05. That's Doo-Wop getting out I submit to you, that's Doo-Wop getting out the car, smoking a cigarette. I submit probably trying to look, see if he's still out, if Donovan's still outside, so they can see how much time they had before Donovan go inside, go get his hair cut. And they just waiting. That's when Willie Bushi pulls up in that car. And that's Kendrick. Initially, he was in the passenger side. And then that's the driver, that's I submit to you all, that's Bradford. He gets out the car. Then you see Mr. Kendrick kind of waves to the infinity. Then he walks over to the infinity. I submit that's when they're gonna talk about what they're gonna do, how they about to kill Diamond, what they're gonna roll around, do what car, what guns in the car, how they gonna do it, who gonna do what. He now gets back in the driver's seat. And we talk about where did they switch cars? I submit to you, behind the gas station. They both made it right in a moment. I'm going to show you what's right behind the gas station where they could have easily switched cars. And remember, we talked about the time, so it's not 8:08. Remember, this time is off by a few moments. And that's them coming down the street in the infinity, shooting. Of course, you're going to see, I'm going to play this, all this, the reaction, what happens in the store. You got babies running. Bullets have no names. And they have the audacity to tell you that we're sitting here trying to charge people of color? No. You should not have to be sitting here on a Saturday trying to get your hair cut and have bullets come inside of a barbershop. Bullets have no names. And there was babies in the front. But you just spraying down the street for what? For your status in YSL? So you can show Mr. Williams that you big and bad? That's what this is about. And that's Donovan's brother. Outside. I submit he saw what happened, but you know what? He ain't gonna tell us. He ain't gonna talk to the police, because that's what the gang culture is. So this is the Texaco. That's Northside Drive. And here are two streets. This one is a one-way street, but they don't follow the law, so I submit that they went up the one-way street. And it's another street. They could have went up either, I submit to you, they went up the one-way street because again, they don't follow the law. So when they turn to right, they switch cars behind here. They switch behind here. It takes no time to drive up the wrong-way street, drive back down, and come back down into their street. That's where they switch the cars at. They both, I guess we didn't ever show you that. And this is where he talks about it. I'm not gonna play it for you, but that's what he said. And let me tell you something, this is how you know they switch cars. We told you he came in the Infinity with your boy Bradford, right? This is divorce Bradford phone records. After the murder, this is him between 6:36 and 7:19. You see the crime scene, he's stationary around the crime scene, right? There's a gap in time between 7:19 and 7:24. At 7:24, between 8:08, this is where Bradford's phone is, right? From 7:31 all the way to 8:08. What's over here? Oak Drive, OG Bentley House, where they said they got rid of the guns. Let me tell you what he's doing. He waiting for them to come back. You want to know how we know that Yak isn't in the car with him anymore? This call right here.
Using security. You may start the conversation now.
So, I live down, I think, I was sitting there like that. Nah, he what's the other guy there, security? Nah, y'all good? Yeah.
Hey, Goldie, Ma.
Who that is? Boosh. What's up, short stuff?
What are you
What's
doing?
going on? Yeah. Where you at? What up?
You hear what he said? Where Yak Gotti at? We waiting for him to pull up. That's at 7:42. That's when, let's go back, y'all. That's when he waiting down here. At 7:42, which is one of the calls that's right here, Yak ain't with him. You want to know why? Because Yak with the other 3 murderers. That's where Yak at. What evidence do we have? No, we don't have DNA. You want to know why? They got rid of the car. No, we don't have DNA. You want to know why? Because they got rid of the guns. All we have is what they told their co-conspirators. And that's what I have to bring to you. What I have are the phone records. What I have are the surveillance videos to corroborate what the co-conspirators said. Because I don't have those things. I wish I had them, but they got rid of it. That's Yak the night of. What'd he say? Maniac's back. That's what he said, right? Y'all know me in my Santana voice. You right. The maniac's back. He just drove the car that took somebody's life. For no reason. For no reason. That's just to show you, that's Divorce Bradford in that Pontiac. That's on that surveillance video. This is when they talk about the guns used to commit the murder.
So back to nothing. Make sure everything right. Nikki pretty much told you it was him, Shannon, Nard, Bentley. Now, they stood up, and a girl went to the phone, went to Bentley house. You did. And when they got them doing it, they supposed to go to the Bentley house. But I think the girl, the girl is supposed to be skinny. She knows what's going on. And this the girl, Shannon, targeted. They changed how they do about the club. This girl, I thought, told them that I was okay with her. So it was Yak driving, Shannon with the AK, Nard with the pistol, and Doo-Wop with the pistol. Now, I don't think Doo-Wop had a pistol. Okay. Right. But you just know what seat, how they got to see the car, all you know is the Yak drive. You guys just know that way drive. And that's based on what Nikki told you. Yeah. Little deep. Okay.
We gonna lie. Why not say Doo-Wop had a gun? Let's lie. We gonna lie big. Everybody had a gun. But he didn't do that. He said, nah, I don't think Doo-Wop had a gun. I don't think so, but I definitely know Yak was driving, because if we're gonna lie, say Yak had a gun too. But he didn't do that.
They until that day, which one? They had AK-72, right? He said, you said you gonna say what kind of gun they had for the murder, right? The AK-72, who's gonna say? The what else? The 4.5. Who's going to 4.5? Shannon. You remember what brand it was? HB or something. XB? Yeah.
What are the shell casings? How you know it was a 7.62? That's what Donovan was killed with. Those the bullets that came out of Mr. Thomas. The shell casings that was found, there was multiple types of shell casings, 45s, 9s, and 7.62s. How they know that? This is called corroboration. This is called verification. They don't know that they don't know what bullet was pulled out of Donovan Thomas's body at the autopsy. They don't know what shell casings the police picked up off the ground. But ironically, they know, it's not ironic. They know the type of gun that they use.
Y'all pull up on plea, and the video right there, they got somebody, they talk about it. So they got guns. Yeah, they had 2 guns. A chopper and a handgun. They got guns and put in the cup. And they just been rolled out to the cup. So when did they pull up? You didn't take his name. Yeah, he was driving a white truck. He wanted to them to Chicago. I live there. You know, they called it the after shoot. Yeah, they look where they were on plea. Vince Scott was on plea. Right. So I guess they were throwing straight to bench spot. And when the throw was at the bench spot, they pulled up on throw, and they got a bench spot, they wiped the car down. And then he said, I don't know if it was Ben. It had to be somebody, if it wasn't Ben, it was somebody that, I mean, he got a cup and broke it up with the cup. You know what I'm saying? And he cleaned up with the car guns. Do you know what kind of car it was? Like, it was a Genesis. Man. Yeah. That's a new one. You know, was it somebody's registered car? Was it a real deal around car? What did they usually bring the car from? Yeah.
If he finishes, he's at the airport.
You know where it is? It's not. Yeah, I'm gonna address my boat though.
Y'all saw the address I showed y'all, right? It's on Oak Drive. That's Bentley spot. And isn't it ironic that that's where the guns was kept in April when Dexter Montgomery, when they went and shot up at Dexter Montgomery, they got all the guns from Bentley spot. Bentley keep the guns. That's what happened here. When we talk about interrelatedness, this is the interrelatedness that we are talking about. The same location, you drop one gun off, you pick one gun up. That's what happened. That's what Walter Murphy, I'm not even gonna play the clip, but that's what Walter Murphy told you back when he was interviewed in July about OG Bentley spot. You think that that's ironic that both Copeland and Zachary talk about the guns going? Oh, and the phone records corroborate that all the phones was at Bentley house right after the murder? All of those things are corroboration. That's evidence.